Hey, how's everybody doing today? Hope everybody's staying healthy, safe, and peaceful. Today we're going to talk about Congress. That's our topic for this week. And, just a couple facts about Congress, before we get into the discussion about Congress and their handling of the coronavirus, right? And the response to the economic fallout of that. So, just a few things. First of all, we talked about this the week on the Constitution, but there's 535 representatives. Every state has two senators, so that's 100 senators. There's 435 total representatives, and the number of representatives per state is based off of population, right? So California has far many more representatives than, say, Colorado, right? Very obviously, because California's population is enormous. And the lower house is known as the House of Representatives, right? And they're there for 2-year terms, right? And you only have to be 25 years old to be able to be a lower house member, right? And then for the Senate, it's 6-year terms, and you have to be 30 years old to be a senator, right? Now, each of the two houses of Congress, right, are given an enormous amount of power. Though you could argue the Senate is given a little bit more. We'll get to that in a second, right? Both houses can initiate or have the power to initiate legislation, right? Both houses can, so they can introduce bills. Both houses also have the power of impeachment, though it starts with the lower house, right? So the lower house gets to impeach an elected official, most commonly the president. That hasn't happened too often in history, but of course it happened with President Trump, right, very recently. That was obviously a fiasco in itself, right? The Senate, not the House, has the power to confirm all of the president's appointees and top level cabinet members, right? The Senate also is the one who's able to sign off on foreign treaties. Both have the power to call off debt, right? And to borrow money as well, right? And at least in the early going, Congress, both houses were tasked with the power to regulate Native American, or what they called Indian affairs back then. But that is now in a whole different jurisdiction under the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And of course, one of their biggest powers, both have the power to declare war, right? Now, this is really important because over time, I think I talked about this in the last lecture, over time, the president has been the one introducing troops to war, and then he's been going back through and getting the approval from Congress later on. That's not constitutional, right? Not even close. Only Congress is allowed to declare war. But we actually haven't had a declared war, an officially declared war by Congress first since World War II, right? So it's been quite a while. So those are some of the more noteworthy powers that Congress has, which is an immense amount of power given to Congress. And as we talked about the week on the Constitution, the amount of power that was given to Congress was seen as slightly overbearing, by the anti-federalists or more libertarian folk at the country's founding. Now, of course, because Congress is given some substantial power during times of crises, right, along with the president, we traditionally look for Congress to take a lead role in handling, complex and crisis situations. So, of course, right, with this the whole coronavirus, COVID-19, Congress has been called upon to act in reference to the economic fallout that has happened from this, right? Now, all of you are aware, and we've talked about this, right, that so far in 3 weeks, we've lost somewhere like 17 million jobs, and that figure looks to be skyrocketing. In fact, the Federal Reserve, one of the Federal Reserve chairmen from the St. Louis branch, predicts that we're going to have between 25 and 30% unemployment at the peak of this crisis, which could happen sometime in mid-May, early June, right? Which is staggering. That's Great Depression level unemployment. So to deal with this, right, Congress has passed one of the most, I guess you could say, controversial bills in its modern history. And certainly its biggest spending bill in its history, right? So you guys may have heard about this. It's been passing a series of stimulus packages to deal with the massive unemployment and to deal with the stoppage of the economy. As state and local governments have shut down the government to quarantine through social distancing. We're all familiar with this, I would think by now, right? Congress has gotten pressure to keep the economy going. So shockingly, the Republicans and Democrats were able to come to some kind of agreement about 2 weeks ago to pass a coronavirus stimulus bill called the CARE Act, right? You'll notice that Congress always uses euphemisms that sound really good for public relations, right? Now, what does this bill do? Well, of course, there was at first a lot of partisan disagreements between the Democrats and Republicans. The Democrats wanted to spend much more on social welfare spending than the Republicans did, with much more generous benefits. And the Republicans wanted a more kind of hands-off approach to begin with, but they eventually met in the middle. So this stimulus bill, again, as I said, is about $2.2 trillion. Oh my gosh, right? And we're going to talk about the consequences of the bill in the next lecture, right? But right now, just getting you guys the bare facts. $2.2 trillion, right? There was about $250 billion allocated to direct payments to every American family, that every income earner that makes under $75,000 to get the full amount of $1,200. You guys probably heard about this, right? So if you earn under 75 grand, right, you more than likely will be receiving a $1,200 stimulus check. The idea is that you'll take that money, pay off debts, or invest it, or buy products that you need, pay for rent, pay for basic supplies, etc., right? So every income earner is getting $1,200 as long as you make under 75 grand, right? Now you'll get $2,400 if you file your taxes jointly together. If you're a married couple and you earn under 125, less than 125,000, then you get $2,400. If you're a married couple making under 125 grand, you have a kid, you get a $500 tax credit on top of that. So that'd be $2,900. If you have two kids, the 24 plus 1,000, that's $3,400, right? And those checks are supposed to actually be dispersed sometime starting this week into next week, right? So that's the first part of the bill. $50 billion emergency money going out to all Americans, right? To get money in their hands immediately. The next provision of the bill has to do with expanding unemployment compensation, right? So we've gone from basically, on average, let's say in Colorado, for example, the highest that you can receive, per month is $1,600 to $1,700 a month off of unemployment. And they determine that by a number of factors: what you were making, how long you were at your job, etc. But what this bill has done, the Stimulus CARE Act, is it's added $600 per week for every person who's qualifying for unemployment. So right off the bat, every American for 4 months is going to have $2,400 of unemployment insurance guaranteed per month, $600 per week, plus whatever their individual states add on to that they normally would qualify for. So, for example, I'm very, very fortunate to have a job right now. Thank you. I wouldn't have it without you guys. But if I were to be unemployed, I'd probably collect somewhere around 11, maybe $1,100 a month from Colorado. So if I were unemployed, I'd get that 1,100 plus under the stimulus bill, I'd be getting six per week. So roughly about 3,500. And then they pulled, I'm pretty sure they pulled taxes from that. So that's another major part, right? Expanding massively unemployment insurance for 4 months, right? Another aspect of it, right, of this entire bill is it's giving basically loans that'll turn into grants, meaning you don't have to pay back the loans to small businesses and medium-sized businesses who agree not to fire their workers and to keep them on their payroll through this entire process. This is considered maybe the whole linchpin of the bill to keep small businesses, medium-sized businesses, moving, right? And that's another huge chunk. I believe that was somewhere in the $500 billion range, $250 billion for the direct payments, the expansion of unemployment insurance, which is a lot of money. And then the most controversial part of this, $500 billion worth of corporate bailouts. This is the most controversial. People like Bernie Sanders, who just dropped out of the Democratic race, spoke out against this very vehemently, right, on the Senate floor. That is very controversial, right? And that the airline industry, of course, is set to receive 25 to 50 billion worth of bailout money. Hospitals, for-profit hospitals, are expected to make billions. Now, what's really controversial about that, of course, is that these for-profit hospitals have made immense amounts of money over the years, as of the airlines. So why are they suddenly, in one quick downturn, suddenly needing all of this money, right? And we found out from the last time we gave bailouts to big corporations back in the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, that what did the corporations end up doing with the money? They didn't give it to the workers, didn't use it to expand benefits and payroll for the workers, but they used it for their own corporate bonuses, which only went to the people at the very top of the companies. So, we're going to get into some of the consequences of this, and we'll also talk of this bill, pros and cons, in the next lecture. And then we'll spend about 5 or 6 minutes of our next lecture talking about pros and cons. And then we'll talk about the partisan divide and how that really came out in the impeachment hearings of Donald Trump, right? So I hope you guys stay healthy, stay well. So much peace to everybody. And I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.